The next generation BMW 5 Series. This is the 2024 530i xDrive, internally coded the G60 generation. In this video, Mark and I are going to take you for a quick drive, walk you through all of the dynamic prowess of this business mobile, and of course, take this into the shop and walk you through all the technical changes. Before we do that, let's talk about the interior and exterior of this vehicle. Starting with exterior and proportions. This is still that classic three-box design, but it's gotten bigger like you're expecting for a new car, wider, taller. We'll walk through why and how in the shop, but all you need to know from an interior and exterior perspective is this is now the size of an old 7 Series, which makes this massive. From an exterior styling perspective, it's more conservative than the iX or new M3, M4, but it definitely follows that design language. It's quite polarizing. Depending on who you are, you're either going to love this or hate it. I've just grown to accept it. Now, from an interior perspective, like every modern luxury sedan, it's technology forward. Thankfully, iDrive 8.5 and the screens associated with it are well implemented. Yes, it's a giant screen in front of your face, but the screen quality is very good. The software behind it is very fast acting. It's more widget focused. While you still do have an iDrive knob controller, you're largely going to be using touch. There's a lot of menu jumping, but at least the menus all react fairly quickly, and it's not that big of a learning curve coming from the old iDrive setup to this one. Again, this is the future, apparently. The one thing I will say is you lose physical HVAC controls, and unlike some of its competition, the touch HVAC controls for the most part work fairly well, and you can customize the screen. My big con with it actually comes down to the experience modes and drive modes. They're now the same thing. You go to My Modes to swap through the various drive modes this vehicle has, and it pairs things like opening up the sunroof and all that other fun stuff. They've removed the traditional drive modes of Sport, Sport Plus, Individual, and Comfort, which I think is stupid. And on top of that, you've ditched or removed the traditional traction control switch. It's now buried in Sport mode. There isn't a clear description of what all the modes do. Like, how do I get into soft suspension? How do I get into firm suspension? It's a little gimmicky. What they have added is art experience modes, which to me, well, it is implemented well, is incredibly gimmicky, and you can even have the artist explain to you why she is working with BMW and how it's going to blow your business portfolio away. Now, from an interior perspective, moving past the technology, it's still BMW, which means it's well implemented. You have good door storage, great feeling seats. These are only heated, though you can get them heated and cooled. All the inputs are good. The driving position's great. You have good visibility. The storage is tremendous. And because this thing is huge, again, you have a big trunk. It's like 18 cubic feet of cargo capacity, which is enormous. The rear seats fold down, your big back seats. All of the core usability things in this 5 Series are still here, and you still have the build quality that you're expecting in a car that can cost north of $70,000. Now, quickly, let's talk about price. The 530i rear-wheel drive starts sub-60, add a couple grand for xDrive. The B58 equipped 5 Series starts in the mid-60s, and you can bloat that price past $70,000. This tester, because it has every option, is a 530 xDrive. It's 70 grand. For that money, I would re-option this and get this as a 6-cylinder and push it into the mid to low 70s. I think you're getting way more car for your money at that point. Now, with all that said, let's head in the shop and put this thing up on the lift. In the shop with the G60 generation BMW 5 Series. Now, this is going to be the first of 2 5 Series videos we do. This is on the internal combustion variant, and we'll be doing a future video on the BMW i5. Now, what do you need to know? Well, this is still the quintessential big executive German sedan, and a lot of the changes to this generation were built around it being a BEV vehicle in the case of the i5, and of course, changes that the Chinese market and the global market have requested. These vehicles are built in either China or in Germany. All the US-spec'd 5 Series are German-made. Now, what mechanical changes have been done? This is on the latest iteration of CLAR, which was co-developed with the BEV variant, so naturally this has gotten wider by nearly 1.5 inches, longer by 3.5 inches, and the wheelbase has grown by nearly 1 inch, and of course it is taller and heavier. It is more rigid than it used to be, and a lot of, again, the center structure changes were around fitting that battery pack in the case of the i5. Now, From a suspension perspective, this being the 5 Series, it is double wishbone front. All the links are aluminum like you're expecting. Most of the suspension components are aluminum, and it's multi-link in the back. And you, in the case of the X-Drive variants, have this giant shear plate in the front to add back some body rigidity. And it's still nearly a 50-50 weight balance, though it is now an over 4,000 pound car. Now, when it comes to suspension itself, you can either get this as a passive setup in the 530 or really the non-M Sport variants. And once you add the M Sport package, you get electronically controlled dampers front and rear. Again, this is a rear-biased all-wheel drive setup in the case of the X-Drive variants. Now, let's talk about drivetrains. Again, iterative improvements over the prior generation 530 and 540. In the case of the B48, which is this, the 2-liter 4-cylinder, it now makes a whopping 7 more horsepower and, of course, nearly 40 foot-pounds of extra torque. A lot of that was done due to the fact that they've made some software changes and the exhaust manifold has been improved in design. I think now it's an integrated exhaust manifold. In the case of the B58, it now makes a lot more horsepower, nearly 40 more horsepower, and I think over 50 foot-pounds of extra torque is good for 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds. They've made mechanical changes, like now Vanos is entirely electronically controlled on the camshaft side, and of course, tuning changes. It is a very efficient and powerful drivetrain. The 4-cylinder that this is gets high 20s city, mid 30s highway, and the inline 6 gets slightly less, but it is a mild hybrid, so 48-volt system. Both engines put their power down through a ZF 8-speed gearbox, which is still excellent and exactly what you're expecting from BMW at this point. One of the things they do really, really well is drivetrain calibration. So with that said, I think it's time for us to go take this for a drive with Mark and explore the 5 Series.
Knock, knock.
It's not a B58, Mark. That's a B48.
That was expressive.
What mood mode are we in?
I don't know. Put me in art mode.
I'm going to put you in art mode, and I will play.
There we go.
Oh, man. And
there
then,
we go.
Wait.
My connection with BMW starts with the creation of the 18 BMW art car. With the digital art mode, we have the chance to cooperate again and integrate my art into the software of the car.
This appeals to my inner artist.
Thank God that's in here so I can learn about the expressive art in my BMW 5 Series.
I'm going to put you back into sport.
Yeah, put me in something sporty because that's why I'm buying this. I want a sedan. I don't want an EV. I want rear-wheel drive. I want a 4-cylinder for $70,000. No, okay, let's get real, Jack. This car, to be fair to BMW, is not spec'd out like how any normal person would buy it unless they stumbled onto the BMW lot drunk and like, I need a BMW, I got a meeting tomorrow, I need a quick lease. You know, you're not really getting a 4-cylinder BMW.
At this price point, once you push past 70, at least in the US, you're getting the B58, like 540i X-Drive variant. This car starts like $59,000, $58,000. Reasonably equipped, the 4-poppers are in the mid-60s, maybe high 60s, and that's definitely more reasonable. From a driving perspective, I've spent more time in this because I'm the one who filmed it. It's interesting in that, like, we've driven all these modern BMWs at this point, and this is sort of what you're expecting now. It's incredibly competent, handles well. The drivetrain calibration, even of this 4-popper, is very good. It's just a very competent car, but it's big now. It's huge, and it's not like, when I think 5 Series, and I know the BMW reps are going to have a meltdown when I say this, but I still think Clive Owen rolling around in an E39 M5, that era of like, you bought a 5 Series as a sports sedan, something you want to tear around a back road in, and what we're about to put this car through is not what this does anymore. It's, I'm rich. I'm a upper middle management. I don't want an SUV. I want a luxury car that's big, quiet, imposing, huge trunk, big back seat, quiet and isolated. And that's what this car is now.
You think so?
I think so. What do you think?
I don't know. I'm mixed on it. In some ways, as a current BMW owner, and I'm angry, and I want to cut people off, I got in this car for the first time and I thought, it's growing on me a lot. And some of it is because I detest a lot of the tech in here for the sake of it. I don't think it makes it a better car. But after a while, like, you get used to it. And I really appreciate some of the modernism in the design and even the outside. I mean, it's not the most classically beautiful car. It's awkward. It almost looks like the iX, I said, from certain proportions, namely in this color. But it's, again, you're going back to what it's offering in terms of the driving experience, which, you know, I've had to forget the fact that it's a 4-cylinder a lot and just kind of focus on what it does good. And, you know, the body and the chassis work amazing. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, this is why you're going to this brand. To me, this car is a little bit too firm. I think it's too firm for what it is.
I think a lot of it's the 21-inch wheels, too.
Yeah, it's and you can tell over this pavement, now that it's really cold out, that the pavement has contracted, so it creates like that.
I put us in relax, though.
Even the, you know, like there's a lot of attention to detail in this car. Like, there really is, and I think this is one of the better companies that focuses and does a cohesive vision of what they want to do as a brand, interior, exterior, and driving experience. A lot of it, yes, is synthetic, right? Like, it's not like old BMW stuff where you get a steering system that loads up. It's just artificially fast.
It's the VGRS rack.
Yeah. I mean, it's really quick to turn in and rotate and all that stuff, but it's not necessarily natural. So this car feels contrived in many ways, electronically, technology-wise, styling-wise, but it is very, very good at what it's doing. Like, probably one of the best in this segment at doing this.
The new E-Class and the current gen E-Class is going away. The new one has all the hyper screens, and I have no idea what it's going to be like. But traditionally, the 5 Series was always my favorite of the big three. The A6, this thing, and the E-Class. I think that remains the case. It's it's modern BMW. It is all of its cons in that it's a lot of gimmicks, styling is controversial, and it's more isolated than it used to be. But the Pro it does all of its objectives so exceedingly well. Yeah, the 4-popper is kind of not my favorite part of this car, but gets mid-30s, and I've been driving this like an asshole, and I get 25 miles per gallon.
Yeah.
The 6-cylinder variant, obviously, jokes aside, that engine's amazing.
Right.
Really powerful, 0 to 60 in the mid to low 4s, probably lower than that. Really good efficiency. I mean, there's not a whole lot more you can ask for in this big executive sedan that you're going to lease because they depreciate like a stone. And after your 3 or 4 years in this thing, you're getting to get into the next one and you're still going to like it. That's the thing that BMW does really well. Iterative design over a long period of time. And, you know, it doesn't matter what generation 5 Series you get into, they still all feel like 5 Series and they all do their task well. Big sedan, lots of people, long distances, high speed. It's just now it's even bigger than it used to be, and you know, you have all the modern car stuff.
I think if you threw the 6-cylinder in here, I think it'd be a much different experience. I mean, and I know it would be heavier.
Yeah.
But for this car, I personally think that it needs it. I do think it needs it because it would deliver that more luxury sound, that smoothness that's missing from this car, from the drivetrain. But really what you're doing is you're just driving this car straight on the highway, and to your point, I think that's what it's going to deliver. Even 4-cylinder or inline 6, you're going to get great fuel efficiency. You know, this car does not fight you at all driving. Basically, it doesn't fight you at all. There's nothing from a driving perspective that you're like, why is it doing that? Why doesn't it do this? It just really responds the way that you want it to respond. And it's, again, when you look at the other cars in this class, and if you're looking for a sedan, there's just not a whole lot else out there that competes with this. And we just did the Lucid Air Pure, the rear-wheel drive version. That's an EV, right? So it's not an apples to apples. I mean, other than that, I really can't think of another sedan that does everything as well as this car does.
There aren't many big luxury sedans left that companies put a lot of effort into. My question for you, and this is a question you posed to me early on, and I agree and I disagree with this question. Would you buy this over something like an SUV? To me, someone who's buying a sports sedan today isn't cross-shopping at an SUV.
Yeah.
But if it was your money, your lifestyle, you think this is a better product than something like a BMW X5, which to me is the quintessential executive class midsize SUV?
So it's really hard because, you know, I've gone through SUV ownership now. You know, I have a big ass X7, and there's times where I've told you this. I'm like, I want to go back to a sedan. I just want a sedan. Because sometimes I don't need to be driving that monster all around, because there are sacrifices. As fast as it is, as great at handling it is, it's not nimble, right? You can't get away from the fact that these tall vehicles just are not as maneuverable. And that's what this brings to the table. Granted, you don't have the size perspective, but if I was looking for a sedan, and I do really enjoy driving this, for me, I go back constantly to the previous generation 5 Series with the V8. You know, I think to myself, that is what I want from a modern sedan. I want the V8. I want a big engine. I want that cruiser, you know, just like ultimate boat. And when I put it down, I'm like, yeah. I get some sense that my penis hasn't shriveled down to like, you know, and I'm aging out and all this stuff. It brings back some excitement that a car like this, it's so technology laden and so modern that I don't feel like a connection to the car. It just is like I'm picking up my phone and driving it around in a lot of cases. I do like what they're doing here in a lot. They do technology the best, like modern technology, as much as it's difficult to use. Like, it's all sorted out. It's just a matter of like where you're at and how much you value a car like this. It is good. It just may not be for everybody.
Yeah, this is for better or for worse. This is 2024 now.
Yeah,
and these are cars. I mean, again, if you want to throw up in your mouth, look at the EQS with the hyperscreen.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that's the new E-Class, man.
Right.
And they're all going to be 4-poppers.
Yeah.
With that, let's head into the final thoughts, sir.
Thanks, Jack.
Final thoughts on the G60 generation BMW 5 Series. So what do you need to know in closing? Well, BMW continues to build a very competent, full-size, executive-class sedan. It does nearly everything very well. The drivetrain tuning is tremendous. Both the 4 and the 6-cylinder are great. The gearbox is good. The interior technology, for the most part, is well implemented. It's packaged well. It is very quiet. There's good storage. It's a very usable-feeling car, and it's great at doing long-distance touring at like 80 miles an hour, sitting there all day long. It does that task exceptionally well. The thing to bring up is the 5 Series is not the E39 generation anymore. It's more luxury sedan than sports sedan. It's much happier sitting at 80 miles an hour than it is tearing up a back road. And that's due to the fact that this is a now more isolated car than it used to be, and it's a much bigger car than it used to be. And is that really a pro or a con? I'm gonna leave that up to you. Now, the other thing to talk about is some of the dynamics and the pricing. This is definitely on the firmer side of luxury, particularly with these 21-inch wheels. If I were to get this car, I'd probably not go to the 21s. There's some harshness associated with it. And if you're gonna be spending over 70 grand, you're much better off in the B58 or the 540i variants of this car. I think once you push past that $70,000 mark, to Mark's point, a car of this size should not have a 4-cylinder. The 6 makes it feel far more premium, and I understand in other markets you have displacement laws and all that other fun stuff. But here in the US, once you push past that $65,000, $66,000 configuration point with the 530 or 5 Series, I'd just get the 6-cylinder. And I really think that's the way this car is intended to be driven. And the other thing to bring up is more of a philosophical point. In the past, the 5 Series and the 3 Series were alternatives to people who didn't want SUVs, and the advantage of these cars, the sedan variants, were that they were sportier and a little bit more engaged. Now that the 5 Series, at least in the non-M5 configuration, is full-blown luxury car, unless you hate SUVs, in many ways the X5 offers more usability, practicality, and in some ways is a better value. So with that, thanks for watching. I hope to see you soon.